Let us welcome the Dean of FAUSP, Ana Lúcia Duarte Lana, for the opening of the conference. Thank you. Ana Lana?
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, Marianne and my colleagues. It's a pleasure to stay here and participate in this opening session of the For Critical Conference with my colleagues, Leandro Medrano and Luis Recaman, and Silvia Colmenares and Luis Rojos of the Polytechnic University of Madrid. Initially, as Dean of the Faculty of Architecture and Urbanism, I would like to highlight the importance that the meeting like this has to consolidated internationalization based on intellectual partnerships and consistent and innovative research practices. The partnership with the Department of Architecture Design from the UPM and FAUSP qualifies our institutional project for building international knowledge networks. But as a teacher and researcher, I would like to mention two other aspects that stand out in the realization of this seminar. The first of them is part of the text of the call of papers from the call for criticals and states that this Congress intends to be a place, an event, where the intellectual and scientific impulse is greater than the sum of the valuable individual contributions. I agree with this challenge, and I think this is a promise and essential path. Another important point refers to the research project coordinated by my colleagues Leandro Medrano and Luis Recaman, which support these partnerships with the UPM and made possible for the FAO to be the international partner of this For Critical. The research, architecture, and urbanism addressing the space in the 21st century aims understand new spatial paradigm segregation strategies and appropriation tactics in the search to understand the new possibilities of appropriation of space and the relationships between urban architecture, the state, and civil society. They use the construction of theoretical and methodological reflection supported on comparative studies. The program of the meeting anticipates the success of the initiative so necessary today, where our spaces lived, taught, and experienced undergo profound transformations with unpredictable results and consequences. It seems to me that more than ever, it's necessary to think, reflect, and research so that we can act purposefully in the challenge of the present. I wish you all very productive meetings and reflections these days, and I reaffirm it's a very, very important to the FAO to participate from this For Critical, and congratulations from the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Professor Lana. Now we would like to call Professor Silvia Colmenares, Director of the Fourth Critical.
Hello, welcome everyone. We're very happy to have you here and hope that these 2 days of intense activity will be useful and pleasant for all. After the welcoming words of Ana Lana, and as the person who has been involved in the coordination or direction of the 4 editions of this conference, I just want to take the floor to make some quick comments on how the Critical project was born and how it has developed until now. The Architectural Design Department is the core of Madrid School of Architecture. It holds a wide range of Chilean perspectives, but it has a long tradition of approaching architecture from practice-based methodologies. Of course, this practice, both from teachers and students, feeds on more theoretical concerns, but these unfold in a quiet and sorted way. When we started this project in 2014, we were convinced that the school was in the need to have another kind of scenario, one where research is promoted within an international agenda and helps to provide a more interconnected and relevant structure. The development of Critical Conference has run parallel to the intensification of research in architectural schools in general and in Madrid School particularly. Today we have a much more robust system of PhD and postgraduate programs, as well as a network of research groups and editorial projects. But most importantly, there is a substrate of potential researchers that is willing to take the risk of thinking about architecture as a challenging activity and have made their best efforts to contribute to the conference. The first edition addressed pragmatism not only as a counterpart of utopianism, but as a general procedure embedded in our contemporary conditions. The second edition, held in 2016, proposed to reframe the concept of autonomy, which has haunted architecture's field of knowledge definition, trying to test its topicality amid the ever-growing transdisciplinary forces. The third edition marked an inflection towards a methodological approach. In 2018, we proposed to reflect upon ontologies as an instrumental genre for the construction not only of architectural theory, but of the history of architectural theory. And now, in the fourth one, we are dealing with duality as an instrument of thought and how the classical binary structure of the comparative method could or should be still enforced today. Also, the current edition represents a shift in the general scope of the conference. It has decisively embraced international collaboration with other institutions. I want to take this opportunity to thank Professor Leandro Medrano for his determination to carry out this joint event between Madrid School of Architecture and the Sao Paulo's Faculty of Architecture and Urbanism. It has not been an easy way because of the extreme conditions caused by the pandemic, but it has also taught us about the strength of people willing to work together. We hope this door that has been opened will set the basis for further international collaboration to host future editions of the Critical Conference. And we like to think of it as a place, even if today it has turned to be virtual, because that is what we architects do. We help to build the places that allow encounter between people. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Professor Silva Comenares. Next, we would like to call Professor Leandro Medrano, Director of the Fourth Critical, to speak. Leandro, your mic.
I'm sorry. Good morning to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Dean Ana Helena for participating in this table, to the UPM partners represented here by Professor Silva Comenares and Professor Luis Rojo, and especially the entire team of research who made possible this edition of Critical. I do not think it's necessary to emphasize the work of organizing such an international event, especially in the virtual environment and during this terrible pandemic. So I'd like to introduce our team. Please raise your hands. Akemi, Alessandro, Jaime, Mariana, Marcos, Rafael, Salvora, and Tatiana. Thank you very much for your impeccable organization and partnership, and of course, dedication. My contact with Critical took place in 2014 in its first edition held in Madrid. On the occasion, the density of the discussion and the ambition of the event made us understand the importance of the space of debate dedicated to critical think in your disciplinary field. It was that same year that I and Professor Luis Ekama created the research group Critical Think and Contemporary City, the so-called PC3 or PC3, dedicated to theoretical critical themes and their consequence in national and international spatial dynamics. The ongoing research at PC3 seeks to reorganize the theoretical, critical, and methodological premise consolidated in local spatial practices, understand the interaction between space and urban society through a critical perspective. For us, is fundamental to resituate the field of architecture and the urbanism in local and global debates. Not by chance, since that first conference in 2014, we have followed the other edition of Critical. And in 2018, we offered to hold the fourth edition at Fausto. We did not imagine this glum and sad scenario of pandemic, not even the disaster local conducted by a political leader whose incompetence has surpassed the most pessimist prediction. But the contest made this space for critical discussion even more important. In Brazil and the world, the need for reformulate or even recreate the meaning of your disciplinary, social, environmental, and the political practices is becoming increasingly evident. We have to resist going back to the old order, the so-called normality. As the Italian philosopher Franco Berardi said, the pandemic has reactivated the future. This Congress is about the future. It's a pity that we are not together for a face-to-face conversation at coffee breaks, visit the place in the architecture in the city of São Paulo, or even for informal chats in the end of the day, perhaps with some wine or caipirinhas. This is an important part of the critical atmosphere. Madrid is perfect for that. And I believe that in its way, São Paulo too. But even so, I'm sure that you have a great event. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Leandro Medrano. Now, we would like to call Professor Luis Recaman, coordinator of the Scientific Committee of the Fourth Critical, to speak. Professor?
Thank you, Mariana. Good morning, everyone. We are very pleased to conclude our work in carrying out this conference. I would like to greet all the people involved in the organization of such an important event, and also the participants from all over the world. Especially, it's up to me at this moment to greet and thank the scientific committee that I had the pleasure to coordinate together with Professor Luis Rojo. It was an intense work that counted on the collaboration of a series of professors from important institutions to whom I would like to express my many thanks. Peer review work is particularly relevant in consolidating the qualitative aspects of teaching and research, which are often claimed but not always well understood. They are the constituent part of our good academic conduct. We should consider it whenever possible. We have counted on 32 members to form the scientific committee, coming from the Netherlands, United States, Brazil, and Spain. In this sense, the evaluation process of this conference took place in two phases. Firstly, we evaluated the abstracts. Secondly, the full articles. We have received 158 abstracts, from which we selected 65 to be published in the proceedings of this Congress. Finally, the scientific committee indicated 27 papers for oral presentation, which will comprise the 7 tables of the conference. I would highlight the wide geographical diversity of these collaborations that took part of this process. 11 Brazilian states, 20 countries in Europe, like Scotland, Austria, North and South America, like US, Venezuela, and the Middle East and Asia, Lebanon, Thailand. All participants, please receive the warmest welcome from the organizers and FAUSP, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Luis Recaman. Last, we would like to call Professor Luis Rojo, coordinator of the Scientific Committee of the Fourth Critical, to speak. Professor Rojo, please take the mic.
Thanks very much. I would like to start thanking the FAO for for hosting this event. It's been a pleasure working with all of you, with Leandro and with Luis and all of you, which I have met today. But it has been a pleasure, and I think it's the demonstration of the optimism that we have to push forward from the academic world in order to overcome this certainly difficult situation that we are all living through. I'm going to try to talk a little bit about the content of the call for papers. So now that we have arrived at the final event of the conference, finally, after 2 years of hard work of many, we have first to congratulate the organizers, but we also have to congratulate the scholars and the students participating today and all along the process for, as it has been said before, the high quality of their work. But as I have said, we also, now that we have arrived at the final event of the conference, it might be worth as well, even necessary, to recall the point of departure of this critical conference, its purpose in particular. Under the title Dual Ethics, the call for papers asks for a reflection of the binary structure of the dual as a mechanism of inquiry, a research tool, as well as an almost natural way of explanation. So this is that, or on the contrary, that is different from this, etc. Thus, we have been testing the techniques of resemblance and coincidence, as well as the ones of dissimilitude and divergence as analytical concepts. An analogy is a comparison between things that have similar features, often used to help explain a principle or an idea. Or so it says the dictionary. It seems harmless at first, but the complexity of dualities, comparisons, and analogical constructions unravel quickly to the point of spreading far beyond the initial paradigm of similarity and natural relationships. Academic research presents us with significant and decisive reflections and decisions to make, not only regarding the topics of inquiry, but maybe even more decisive over methodologies. And Silvia has already pointed out this. Thus, within this framework, we decided to center attention on dual structures and address the concept of resemblance and coincidence, as well as dissimilitude and divergence. In the realm of science, it will be difficult to argue for the appropriateness of comparison between two unrelated elements. The relationship has to be there before the construction of the argument. However, for other purposes, and might be architecture one of them, the further away and unrelated the elements brought together, the more significant and insightful its meaning might be. Discovery for the surrealist relied on arbitrariness, on the unrelated and the unexpected. The two, as often happens, might take control. The surrealist poet Paul Eluard, referring to the outcomes of automatic writing in the 1930s and also the workings of the unconscious in our minds, said at that time, and I quote him, "These are no puns, no word games. Everything finds its echo, its reason, its similarity, its opposition, its becoming. Everything is comparable to everything." For Eluard, as well as for Breton and many others at the time, the arbitrariness in the analogy is the only way to interrogate reality, to unmask its true contents from under the protecting surface of codes and protocols, professional, political, social, etc. A comparison is a simplified form of analogy. In a comparison, the elements compared keep their protagonism. In an analogy, however, the relationship constructed between the elements becomes more significant, even sometimes dominant. I believe that we have to keep in mind, even if it seems all too obvious, that any comparison builds a relationship, and that if the link is arbitrarily constructed, it will become the actual content of the relationship. Thus, extreme dualities lead to paradox, the actual terrain of surrealist. When it comes to the construction of analogical relationships, we architects often act as collectors, as opposed to the procedures used by ethnographers. The collector operates precisely in the inverse of the ethnographer, regrouping the artifacts of a dismembered and familiar cultural reality according to a new, alien, and arbitrary laws. Each object, upon becoming part of the collection, is separated, not without violence, from its ecosystem, the one within which it was produced and within which it had, so to speak, a natural function. And its new usefulness within the collection derives from a new taxonomic reclassification that removes its object from its context and replaces it into a new one. The ethnographer, on the contrary, will try to preserve the integrity and identity of the object of study, preserving the seamless fabric that Bruno Latour has called network. So in consequence, we could say that this conference has shifted the focus of inquiry from content, the topics, the themes, towards the ways in which we work with them. We have tried to underline the fundamental and strategic role of and significance of the methodologies we decide to deploy, sometimes inadvertently, as opposed to the more common protagonism of content. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Luis. Thank you all for being here. We are glad to welcome you and honored to host our first keynote speaker, Professor Sven Olof Wallenstein.